Greetings and welcome to another edition of the FwooshCast. With you, as always, it's me, Nick. But I am excited to announce that we have a special topic that we're going to be discussing today, and that is the currently ongoing crowdfunding campaign for the Mattel WWE Ultimate Edition WCW Monday Nitro entrance stage. And there is no better person to talk about that with us than Mr. Steve Ozer himself, also known as Action Figure Attack from the Mattel WWE team. Steve, thanks for joining us and welcome to your, hopefully just we can say the first time that you're on the FwooshCast. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And I actually can't believe we've not done this before. So yeah, hopefully
I
the first
know
of many.
I am a big WWE fan, particularly of the Golden Age and kind of leading into some of the era that we're actually going to talk about today. But I'm glad that we were able to get this synced up so we can talk about this exciting crowdfunding campaign that is entering the final stretch, right?
Yeah, it's been going on for about a month now. We've got a week left. This thing launched WrestleMania week and off to a strong start. And then, as crowd funds go, you got to keep that push going in the middle and into the home stretch. So here we are trying to spread the good word on, I mean, to me, what is a dream item for any, not only wrestling fan, but like a fan of, music or concerts or anything, because it's a very multi-purpose stage.
Yeah, this is a very interesting item, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of display the Mattel Creations page for this campaign right now, which we'll make sure that we have the address and everything, so people can navigate there right there on the window screen for this. But this is a large item. It kind of follows up your first successful campaign, which was the New Generation stage. And you guys have gone with the, I think one of the key focal points of, I always think of the Monday Night Wars and whatnot when it comes to this, and that is the very elaborate entrance stage. And, I'm sure you've discussed this, but this is a huge item, right? You've got some of the dimensions that are listed on here: 40 inches wide by 20 inches tall, even larger than that. What makes this Mattel Creations crowdfunding avenue the best fit for an item like this?
Well, crowdfunding is a thing now in our hobby for sure. And when we as a team are asked, what we want to try to crowdfund, it's those otherwise unaccomplishable items, right?
Mhm.
Something big, something that won't fit in, the modern retail environment, sans Toys R Us here in the US anyway, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day we had, the flag and Eternia and all that stuff at Toys R Us, but
Yeah.
some of this stuff just isn't feasible, given the limited and competitive shelf space at most retailers. So we look for items that are our dream items for our consumer base, maybe that have some crossover appeal as well, and we shoot for the stars. And we look to significant eras, memorable eras of WWE. And what is more memorable than the Monday Night War era, WCW versus WWE? So we honed in on this particular stage, the Nitro stage, and we got our fingers and toes crossed now that we can cross that finish line and make this a reality.
Yeah, you began to touch on it because one of my questions was is that obviously it makes sense to have it in this avenue. What made this particular entrance stage, aside from just the sheer elaborate and ornate nature of it, the right choice for the next WWE crowdfunding campaign for you guys?
I think we had a short list of popular stages, and I think we honed in on stages primarily because that's kind of in the world of WWE what is big enough and worthy enough for a crowd fund, right? We don't have to crowd fund action figures. We
Mhm.
already do vehicles in our kids' Reckon line, and those vehicles have collector appeal as well. So what can we do, in this world of WWE that is crowdfund worthy? So we did hone in on entrance stages and larger set pieces from WWE and WWE owned brands like WCW. For this particular stage, it kind of just came down to what do we think was accomplishable at the next level up beyond what we did in our first crowdfund. That first crowdfund was the new generation arena that had the neon entrance, and it came complete with a ring, and that was $250 at the time, right? So what is next beyond that? That is still ultra popular, and I think Nitro fits the bill. It's accomplishable. $400 obviously is a steep price point, but other things, it gets even hairier with prices when you go beyond this, right? So start building the process here, laying the foundation, the groundwork for future stages. And to be transparent, a lot of the tooling here will be able to bank and use for potential future stages should this go through, which will in turn lower the hypothetical prices on those, because it's a lesser investment as you move on down the line. So we thought this was a good starting point. It's ultra popular, probably top 2 most recognizable entrance stages of all time. Debatable whether it's number 1 even. So we thought there was a significant consumer base who would recognize this and hopefully want this as part of their collections.
Yeah, that's a great point. I grew up a lot in the golden age of WWE, and it was exciting. But when people came down to the ring, it was like, oh, they're just going to push the black curtain open and down the aisle that they come. And then the new generation era, you got the neon, that was cool. But when this arrived on the scene, this was like next level in terms of production, and it was almost shocking to me because I think I'd been away from watching wrestling regularly for a few years to come back and see when guys are coming out to the ring, coming through a stage like this. It was shocking because of the pyrotechnics, the lights, everything that comes with it. And it looks like you guys have done a lot of representation of some of those things here with this crowdfunding item.
It definitely, but you mentioned the old black curtain days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, there was some sort of entrance set up or staging, and that always felt very special, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of nice to see in toy form the progression of entrances through these recent items, right? We did the Raw letters in a Target box set, new
Yeah.
generation entrance. Now moving on to this next era of stages, and this is the point where everything became very commonplace, right? To have like some sort of massive entrance. So we're kind of recreating it almost linearly with these releases.
Yeah, yeah, and it's going to take you to I can just see the building of it eventually, because there was a WrestleMania entrance that was like several stories tall and long and whatnot that came on eventually. So keep moving in that area or in that direction. This is a good building block, I guess, to work towards those types of goals eventually, right?
For sure. I don't know if we could do the 39 stage, or people have to the crowdfund will have to come with a house, right?
Yeah,
To
right.
accommodate it. But we'll do whatever is reasonable that people still want to own.
Right. Well, that's awesome. And if we can kind of go through some of the points on this, because this is something that, it obviously has a lot of different pieces for it. It is modular. So the way that it's kind of set up in this window right now is, I think, what everybody remembers the classic setup to be. But it does offer potential to do kind of some custom ways that you set it up and whatnot, and some of the features that come with it, right?
Yeah, yeah. I showed off a few reels and Instagram stories of like a slim configuration. So that's just, instead of 2 stage panels deep here, as you see on the photos, you can do 1 stage panel deep, and that'll fit on most shelves, bookshelves
Mhm.
like that you would get at IKEA, or the shelves behind you on top. You can pull those panels forward and do a really long stage, kind of like back in the day, like WCW would sometimes have a stage that extended from the entrance to the very ring itself,
Mhm.
or anything in between. I even saw somebody post, and it's circling around on social media today. They kind of just photoshopped out various pieces and put it in an IKEA detolf,
Yeah,
right?
I
So just
saw
going
that
up
as
and
well.
down. The banners, the WCW letters, the framework entrance. So there's tons of customizability here. And if you're not a wrestling person or WWE or WCW person, you can pull a lot of these elements out and reconfigure them and do just like a rock concert stage for Kiss figures, or the on tour Turtles, or whatever it is that you may have in your collection, Metallica.
Yeah. That's a really good point because you know, you obviously get some of that same similar caging and whatnot that comes with it, and the lights. But I really liked seeing the different components of it in the IKEA shelves, because you know, having an item like this, I think it's, you know, it's a dream item for a lot of people. But a lot of people are, you know, faced with, I only have so much space or certain ways that you know, I can display something. So I think having the modular aspect to an item that's as large as this is really important. So it's definitely appreciated the forethought that you guys put into this to be able to do such a thing.
Yeah, and the designer of the actual stage itself, he just did an interview with, I want to say, maybe comicbook.com, where he
Mhm.
discusses that in detail. And it's like, you know, he built this initial version, or an initial version of a concept stage, and it was just like insanely massive. And we all got together and stood around it, and we're like, so we were very conscientious to scale it down while it still looked gigantic and to the eye, authentic to the size that you remember from the 90s, but making it more manageable, and you know, giving it that modularity so that you can customize it and make it work for your own individual needs.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because to the other side of that, there's definitely some authenticity that comes with an item like this. And when we're talking about, you know, your core WWE figures, be the elites or the basics, they all run at about that between 6 and 7 inch scale, primarily. And the rings that are, you know, authentic to their size, those are big too. So this the modular portion, so it can be broken up, is important. But if you're going to put it all out together, you know, a grandiose stage like this certainly can't be dwarfed just by the ring itself, right?
Of course, and I do have it right here in front of me,
Okay.
so I'll turn the camera around and give everyone a glimpse of, you know, kind of that ring. You know, I mean, it's a huge ring, right? 21
Yeah,
by 21 plus the stage itself. So it's all really massive. Like seeing it all together. I don't even know if this is translating well to the video, but you know,
it is.
it's an impressive thing. And this is, you know, it is a little bit of a wider table here because it's a conference room table,
Mhm.
but it's your standard conference room table. So, you know, it's not so big that you can't do something with it. But yeah, I mean, great display piece, lots of possibilities. Um, I hope I'm not the only one who owns one of these, right? I hope it doesn't wind up in my cube sitting there behind me in all of my meetings.
I hope not, because I have backed it and I'm very much looking forward to it. And I mentioned that I am more of kind of a golden age fan, but to your point, being able to change it out and do different things with it as well, you know, that type of thing, you know, I think can cross eras, obviously. And I'm really impressed with the light effects and whatnot, how what there's over like 100 LEDs, and it's you know,
Yep.
controllable by a remote. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so you can just cycle through tons of authentic lighting modes here. And you know, this is something else I said. Credit once again to Mike, the stage designer. He watched tons of archival footage and he was like, "Hey, Ric Flair's lighting, you know, entrance is different than Hollywood Hogan's, and it's different than Sting's." And I was like, I just thought it was random, to be
Yeah,
honest with you. You know, and I'm like the in the weeds wrestling nerd, you know, on the
yeah.
team along with Bill McKenna. So for him to notice that they were specific and repeated for certain superstars, that was pretty cool. So he implemented them, and these are, you know, straight out of Monday Nitro itself, and does come with this cool remote, you know, Nitro logo on it.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And you know, we will try. I don't think we can officially, since I don't even know if all these talents that he programmed into the stage are under contract right now. But that's something we can spread through the community. You know, throw up a post on the forums or something, and let everybody know who you know, these custom light modes belong to.
Yeah, that is fantastic, because you know, when I watching it back then, like you, I would have thought that it was random. Now I get that the next step was the video screens and whatnot that, you know, made it very specific, but it's very cool that you know, the research that was done in order to make it specific to some of these entrances to these particular superstars, because they are the superstars themselves are obviously a very important part of this, and you know, the giant collections that people have of figures that fit in with this era, or any era really. But that isn't to say that this crowdfunding campaign doesn't help kind of I guess kick the tires with some very memorable personalities who I think people closely affiliate with this stage, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not only does it have several tiers worth of figures, of course, Rey Mysterio baseline figure offering, and we did initially attempt to have that Hulk Hogan as an early bird figure. It didn't quite work out, but we still want to give you the same amount of value right at the base level, right? So we were able to shuffle some things around and include the first time in the line, Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner, and this is just after his heel turn when he began his singles run. Work in progress 3D model of that here, but some improvements with deco and sculpting on the singlet, of course. But we're trying to arm this stage with as much potential as possible by giving you, a mainstay of WCW and Cruiserweight division. Who can forget that, right? That was
Right.
just like a pillar of WCW Monday Nitro. So Ray representing that, complete with soft goods and everything. And then a big time, addition in Scott Steiner being a first time in the line. And then you've got, at 7K, you have Diamond Dallas Page, the people's champ, the first people's champ in wrestling.
Yeah.
Right. And Dallas was kind enough to come out and do our live stream and talk about a lot of his memories from, his I mean, these days of WCW leading into his eventual main event run. I think this gear is actually when Randy Savage lost to him,
Hmm.
maybe for the first time on a pay-per-view or something. So it's a meaningful look for Dallas. And then after this, he was off to the races and eventually became world heavyweight champion. We shuffled some other things around and we moved down Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
Uh, this is from Warrior's WCW debut, which was just like insane at the time, him appearing in WCW.
Yeah.
And in figure form, this only appeared one other time in the old Jax line, if you remember, and it was like a 1 of 5 figure or something that was made exclusively for Ultimate Warrior himself. So not many people were able to get this as an action figure. So, Bill McKenna did such a great job along with Dan in recreating the artwork for his duster. So that's incredible. And, when Hulk unfortunately didn't get unlocked as an early bird, there were still plenty of people saying, I wanted that Hulk figure, right? So there's
Hmm.
still a chance. If at 11,000, if we get to 11,000 backers, you can unlock this WCW Nitro debut Hulk Hogan figure. And he's got 2 different shirts, this one without the tear down the center and the other with the Velcro down the center. So you can simulate him ripping off the shirt, new head sculpt. Yeah, so cool iteration of the Hulks are there and representative of the early days of Nitro. And really long-winded here for this particular response, but we've got the Monday Night War line coming to Walmart in 2024 with
Hmm.
Elites and Ultimates. And that line, should it be popular with collectors, like we've got long-term plans for that. So who knows what we'll be able to accomplish in expanding the WCW and WWE Attitude Era rosters with that line.
Yeah, that well, and that's a great point, because my WWE collection's kind of around the corner over here, and I have the ring spilling out with all the different figures and whatnot. But this is an item that also works well just as a display space piece too. And the fact that you're, like I said, you're jump starting it. I mean, there are some figures that are out there right now that obviously are era compatible with this, but you're really getting it going with these 5. And then as we continue on into 2024, different superstars in that era that can really help just fill this out very nicely. I think that's something that's important to for people as well, because if you're going to have a grandiose entrance to go along with the ring, you want the guys to go with it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've seen tons of feedback. And with an item like this, of course, everyone is fantasy booking the lineup of figures. It should have had, X, Y, and Z. Well, if any of those are truly accomplishable or become accomplishable, publishable, I mean, they're going to come, right? They'll
Right.
appear, and I can say a lot of those figures that were being asked about. I mean, they were revealed in the days following the announcement of the crowdfund. Scott Hall's Nitro debut, Roddy Piper from WCW, Bret Hart in all black, and we've seen so many more heel Hulk Hogan. So there's a bunch more coming, and I have high hopes for that Monday Night War line. So I think we can keep that going for years to come.
Yeah, just the ability to recreate the third man piece on that's huge, because I couldn't believe it when that, I mean, everybody I think marked out for that, right? But to have Hulk Hogan be a turncoat, because I didn't realize that he actually started off as a villain back in the AWA days at that time, because I was too young or for that. But it was something to have Hulk Hogan turn heel like that, and to have really the ability to kind of create the whole setting for it. That's pretty cool for just speaking personally, for someone who kind of started with the golden age and then saw how the personalities and the different things changed. That was a significant thing.
And it was one of those things. It was I mean, the internet existed, but it was pre-internet being what it is now.
Yeah.
And I mean, the pay-per-view happened, Bash at the Beach, and maybe there's some rumblings going on. And for those of us who did have the internet, we're seeing things. It's like you almost don't believe it, right? If you didn't see the pay-per-view, you don't believe it. And then that Nitro was like, holy smokes! Like, I remember I was at my cousin's house. It was the summertime, and I would spend a lot of time there, and it's just like seeing that unfold. It was just like, wow. And, knowing that maybe Hulk's red and yellow run maybe should have been coming to a close, but you still never believe that it should happen, and it did. And it changed the business. It really did. That era of wrestling completely changed the business, and it's probably the reason that it's so popular, today, because of what transpired during that late 90s Attitude Era.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. The Rick Rude being on both Raw and Nitro in the same night, that was another big thing too. And so yeah, it just when I started thinking, when I first saw this, I was like, this is really cool, and I think that I want to have this. It's not like my very very specific era, but when I started to think about all of the things that happened around this environment and over this time, I started to realize you were actually watching and paying a lot closer attention than like I was remembering that I was doing, because there's so many, as you were speaking to, important and just seminal things that occurred during that time, and being able to really have the whole setting for it that's a really awesome thing, and I hope we're able to get to it.
I mean, ultimately, and I don't want to get ahead of myself with this, but we're going to say this is getting funded by Friday the 5th. It's happening. We're getting 5K plus backers. Hell, we'll get 11K and unlock the
Yeah,
Hulkster, right?
get it all.
But the ultimate dream is to have, that Attitude Era ring that already exists next to this Nitro ring. So here you have your Nitro stage, Nitro ring, Attitude Era ring, and on the other side, having that Monday Night Raw, iconic entrance stage with the big screen. And it's like, I mean, looking at this table, it will fit on this table, and I will probably be in this room showing everybody everything, should we get to that point. But I mean, that's the dream, right? And you truly recreated an epic moment in time for both companies, which is just like unheard of, and never truly been done before. I mean, at this level anyway, right? We had the Titantron. I don't know if you remember the Jax
Yeah,
days, and now entering the Titantron.
yeah,
But like, in comparison to the realism that we're bringing to the table now, it's just like it's incomparable.
yeah. Well, what I know this is always a hard question for someone who is so closely, working on something and in the weeds with it. But what's your favorite single part about this item?
I think it's the fact that we're in a position right now to be able to bring items like this to collectors, right? And some people know me a little better than others, but I was in the weeds collector long before working at Mattel. I was the one in the early days of Instagram going to Comic-Con and covering it on social media, right? So it's like this, to be able now to try to bring dream items to life is pretty special, right? Like something at this scale, like I said, without a Toys R Us, it would have been unaccomplishable. And even with Toys R Us, you'd probably be lucky if you got a kid's version of
Yeah.
this, like a purely kid with breakaway entrance ramp and letters and stuff. But here we can get a legit collector focused version. So I think to me that's the greatest aspect, that we're in an era where we can do this. And I do thankfully work for Mattel where they support this stuff and they're willing to take a chance with things like this. And that's the beauty of crowdfunding, right? Taking a chance. And if it doesn't work, okay, it's a bummer, but it is what it is. It's kind of the point of crowd funds. You minimize that risk and take a stab at something and put it in the collector's hands. Do we want items like this, higher price point, higher authenticity and detail? So that's pretty special. And being a longtime WWE and WCW fan, lifelong fan, like giving back not only to other fans but to the talent themselves. Like Dallas was here and he was excited, and like he knows the importance of continuing the legacies of these superstars with action figures and video games and trading cards. So that's super rewarding for me.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And I love to hear about that from the perspective of someone who is, working on an item like this. Within all of that, what makes items like this uniquely challenging from a development standpoint or just a consideration standpoint? Because as you said, this is do you want it? Is it something that you want to pay? Because it has to be a premium price for the sheer scope of it. But when you're considering those things, what are the challenging things that you really have to work through on an items specifically like this?
I mean, one is the dedication of time, right?
Mhm.
Because you are working on a project like this while simultaneously keeping the business alive otherwise, right? Like the stuff that, really pays the bills and keeps the lights on. It's your action figure business, it's your kids' business, your collector business that's elsewhere outside of this item. At the end of the day, does this, generate a nice chunk of money? Potentially, right?
Mhm.
But you're putting all that effort and the resources of dozens of people really first, without a guaranteed payoff of something, so that there is a lot of upfront work and development and time spent, and it's nights and it's weekends, and it becomes a passion project for those who are, especially in the early stages, who get to work on something like this. So I think that's the challenge there. Like, are you driven enough to really make it happen with a lot of love, because you have so many other primary responsibilities while you're doing this? If this was my only job, this would be a completely full-time plus job anyway, right?
Right.
But here we are, like, doing everything else and then trying to make these things happen for everybody. So I think that's really the toughest part, but it is worthwhile, right? Because myself, both Bill's designers who work for me, Mike, we all care very much, and we're collectors ourselves. So it makes it all worthwhile, especially when they get funded and they happen.
Well, and speaking of the funding part of it, because obviously, the initial goal is to have, the base line item, become a reality. And then as you talk, there are figures that will be added on. But Mattel Creations is it's a great spot, a great arena to be able to feature, something like this. And I think that really speaks to, a company's understanding of how, different avenues are possible and things are kind of evolving in terms of like the collector world goes. Do things tend to build on each other when we talk about successful crowdfunding things as we move through them? Or do you, when you're developing something like this, does it, okay, well, the and this is hypothetical, the first one we didn't make goal on, but the second one we did, and now we're working on the third one, do those kind of build off of each other in a way, or do you just kind of keep them nebulous into themselves?
I I mean, of course, but maybe both, right?
Mhm.
Both. You have to consider the item you're making and the audience. Maybe there's a different audience. Like, I have to talk about something everyone knows about. We'll use Eternium as an example,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
they came after the new generation arena. So a lot of the learnings and mistakes of the new generation arena, you were able to transfer over to Motu and Eternia for that crowd fund. But then some things maybe didn't work, right? That worked well for WWE. Or, in the moment, and this always happens, like you just change your mind in the moment, and maybe you wanted X, Y, and Z with the last crowdfund, and now you don't want that anymore with this crowdfund. So there's so many variables, and some of that goalpost is constantly moving, which is just the nature of the beast. But yes, you learn from everything and you evolve and you try to implement those things. Like for instance, people wanted more figures as tiers. They
Mhm.
wanted more tiers, period. We added those all in right away. You know, people like the early bird. We came out of the gate with the early bird. People didn't want a ring included with the crowdfund. We didn't include the ring with the crowd. I mean, that would have driven the price up, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you just want a stage, you get it. You don't have to get a ring. So it's like all those considerations come into play. Not only, you know, that, but thinking long term with these projects, at least for WWE, we're afforded that ability that we can maybe plan some things with reuse potential, right?
Mhm.
So that eventually you pass on the savings to the consumer with lower price points, right?
Yeah.
So there is a build to it. But then at the same time, you do have to consider like, hey, you know, there's a new item for another brand, and but guess what? That consumer is completely different, right?
Yeah.
And they want X, Y, and Z, whereas the WWE audience doesn't want that. So you have to take everything into account, learn as much as you can, pivot in real time because it's very entrepreneurial, and we did that. Like I said, Hulk didn't make it. We were
Yeah.
able to move Scott Steiner up. Like this is an entrepreneurial project inherently by being a crowdfunding item. So you know, you just keep all that stuff in mind, and you just keep evolving as you go with anything like this.
Yeah. You know, when you decide on, you know, an item like this, or even back to, you know, the first campaign with the ring, you know, you come up with the ideas, you get into development. How does it work with, you know, when you go to your, you know, partner, obviously like WWE, and say, hey, we want to do this massive, you know, project that's going to be crowdfunded on our site. What's that, you know, kind of experience like when, you know, talking through kind of these new different avenues for, you know, really giant and premium you know, products that, as you said, aren't like the core line that, you know, a partner may be used to dealing with on a regular basis, right?
Yeah, you know, I've been fortunate to work with great partners in WWE, in that they love trying different things and innovation and pushing the limits on things. They're not one to rest on their laurels, or they wouldn't want us to rest on our laurels, right? Could you just coast? Not coast, it's always tons of hard
Right.
work, but could you coast, for lack of a better term, on your action figure and you know, kid ring business? Sure, I guess, right? But you don't want to do that. You want to grow your audience, you want to grow your kid audience, grow your collector audience, and see what the limits are of what you can do and go past them, right? And grow that. So they've always been great and very supportive of any projects like this, things that are out of the box. You even see that with our Comic-Con exclusives, right? Prior to Slim Jim Macho Man, right? You know, WWE didn't have a big Comic-Con presence, and there were, you know, some hits and misses, but never like mega successes, you know, if we're being honest, until that Macho Man. And that Macho Man was out of the box thinking. And ever since then, we've been off to the races with Comic Con with full WWE support, because it's not like we just decide, let's do Slim Jim Macho Man and we make it, right? There's a lot involved. There's another partner involved. There's legal involved. It's a food item, sort of, right?
Right.
And then, you know, with some of the other items we've done, like Mr. T and Zeus, those are additional celebrity signings and everything that comes with working with a talent that is out of the norm of you know, being under WWE contract. So, you know, they've been great, and anytime we want to do something and we show them that there's viability, they do everything they can to support us and make it happen. So they've been great. We're still, I mean, I was just texting, you know, right before we talked with a partner with WWE, and things that we're going to be doing, you know, in this coming last week of you know, the campaign, and see what we can do this week to really, you know, make sure that they're supporting us in every way they can as we approach Friday.
Yeah. Well, you know, you make a good point, because this items like this feel like you know, flourishes that are deserving, to something pretty incredible that you guys have, you know, built together. I mean, you mentioned, you know, the cool Comic-Con pieces and whatnot, but let's not lie. I mean, the Elite line is up over 100 series at this point. The basic line is what, into the 130s now, I think, that's current at retail. And as you said, there's always there are always new talents to do different versions and whatnot, and you know, you know, keep going through the eras and as people change and kind of the modern thing. But being able to add specific items like this to such a, you know, massive line itself, I think that's what really starts to set things apart, as, hey, this is a success because of, you know, what we're doing, what the fans like and appreciate, and having something like this almost feels like a cool benchmark in a collection that is continuing on and has accomplished so much already.
Yeah, I mentioned the evolution of you know, entrance stages in wrestling, right? And it's like you see the continuous evolution of the line, over 100 series of basics, over 100 series of elites at this point, improvements to those lines with True FX, DIJ,
Mhm.
right, for their faces, with double jointed pinless elbows and soon to be pinless legs. So they're ever evolving, and like what we've been doing. I mean, you know, it used to be, you know, rings for your kids' media drivers is what they're called, right? Those
Yeah.
items that are at both Walmart and Target. It's a big box item. Used to be rings and variations of rings with, you know, a guy in a cage or whatever it might be. And then, you know, you try different things and you evolve to vehicles, right? And they're a hit. So it's this great evolution. And like I said before, we're so lucky. We're in a moment in time across the board, you know, not just, you know, here, you know, at Mattel, but like, you know, lots of people are doing things like this and bringing dream items to life. So it's just such a cool time to be a collector in this moment in time. And there's just like so much momentum going on for us that I hope everyone's really having a good time right now, because it is. And you look at your collection, right? So you've seen the cycles go up and down, right? So I think, you
Yeah.
know, like we're having a moment here and it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it makes me, you know, it kind of, you know, breaks down the whole, you know, oh, what era or whatever that you're a fan of. Because as I, you know, I said, the more that I talk about, oh, well, I was really into this era or that one or whatnot, something like this just feels like, even though it is specific to an era, it's so large and massive, and it's such a cool thing in and of itself that it breaks down those barriers, right? It's like, you know, a lit up light effect stage entrance. You know, I think Andre the Giant in his suit walking out with the that can work in something like this, just because it's going to be cool. And
Yeah.
it defies the era just a little bit, I think.
Look, if someone who comes into your house and sees this on top of your you know, bookshelf behind you, and you've got all modern guys on it, they're not going to be like, that's modern guys and I don't like modern WWE. They're going to be like, holy smokes, this is awesome, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have any wrestlers on this thing and you've just got the old, I think it was McFarlane Metallica figures posed on it, they're going to be like, holy crap, what? And it's all lit up and everything. So it's one of those things, and a lot of what we collect are things like that, to where people see it as a whole or see it on display and they're like, wow, this is like cool and this is impressive. It doesn't matter if you are exactly that particular fan of that era or genre or whatever. It's like cool stuff. If you appreciate pop culture, you appreciate cool stuff, like, you know, these items, this item, you know, it's just massively appealing.
Well, now you reference the music aspect of it. It's like it feels like the Electric Mayhem needs to, you know, play at, you know, halftime or something like that on that, because you're right. It's going to look cool that way. And to your point, it doesn't matter, because something is just when it's a great item and it looks cool, and you know, people are going to notice it and take it on its own terms, which I think is important for items like this too. And I think that, you know, all of the different effects and things that you guys have included really helps it stand on its own too.
Can I just say, there's been multiple times now in these interviews and when I'm talking to people that the Electric Mayhem come up, and I am a huge Muppets fan. I lived in Orlando at the time and
Uh-huh.
found out that the Muppets were appearing on Monday Night Raw, and
Yeah.
I drove up from Orlando to Atlanta because the Muppets were on Raw, and like what an amazing memory. And I love that Muppets are in the WWE, fabric right now, and Sheamus is Beaker's cousin, and that's canon. So that's awesome. And it's only a matter of time, before I break out my Electric Mayhem, either Palisades or
Yeah.
DST, and pose them on here and do an Electric Mayhem shoot.
Listen, there have been countless celebrities that have been affiliated with the WWE over its lifespan, but if Animal wasn't like created to be like the perfect juxtaposition between Muppet and sports entertainment, I don't know who is. So
Exactly.
that's a good. Well, okay. So we were talking, we're just almost about halfway there. This is going to end on this coming Friday as far as the campaign goes. So to get to that initial 5,000 in order to see the entrance itself and the first couple of figures become a reality, that needs to be met by this coming Friday. So time is of the essence. But what is something about this or a point or two that you would like to make that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure that people know about as we kind of head into this home stretch?
I think, we're in the early days of crowdfunding. In this iteration at Mattel, of course, we all remember the old Matty Collector days with
Yeah.
Castle Grayskull and the subscription method. To me, that's the planting the seed of what we were able to do now, right? Now it's full-blown traditional crowdfunding, and we're on the way to a lot more special things, right? So, items like, the success of this just paves a clear path for even more, right? The Monday Night Raw Attitude Era stage that we mentioned. Who knows what else could happen within the world of WW alone, based on the success of something like this, right? And that's not me saying like, hey, if this fails, we'll never do anything like this again, or nobody else will. Like, of course, we'll try, right? We'll try different things. The beauty of the crowdfund is some are meant to fail, right?
Yeah.
But like, I just think like the momentum that you can garner by having successes like this, it just like it makes a clear path and sends a clear message like, hey, our fandom, wants items like this, and let's do more. That's what I'm excited about. I want people to keep that in mind. It doesn't mean like if you don't want this, buy it, right? Like if you don't want this, that's okay. Don't buy it. Like, but if you do, and you're on the fence, jump on board now. Let's start gaining even more momentum, build confidence that this thing is going to get backed with people who are on the fence as well. And let's make it happen. Let's anniversary what happened with the New Gen Arena in those final 2 days, as it just like took off like a rocket ship, and we blew past the 5,000 mark and shot all the way up to past 8,000. So
Yeah.
let's try to replicate that this week, and unlock some of these figures.
Yeah, that's the crazy part about crowdfunding campaigns is that you can typically look at them in the first 2 days, and the last 2 days are generally the biggest days, which that's great for that bump at the end, but it keeps everybody kind of in suspense all the way through. But I'm looking forward to it. I am hoping and I am thinking this is going to be a success. It's going to be like you said, a great item in and of itself, to not only that particular era, but to other eras as well. And kind of a building block as we move around. So as we move forward, sorry. So the good part is that the WWE Ultimate Edition WCW Monday Nitro entrance stage is currently up at the Mattel Creation site for $400. As we said, Friday is the last day. So if you want to get this, get your support and back it now. But Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. This has been a really great conversation. And I hope we can do it again for some of the other items, that you're going to be working on in the future. And I'm looking forward to seeing what those are, just not until after this becomes a success and we're all pulling for it. Okay.
Right on. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time, and I'm down to chat toys anytime.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. We appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining us. And until next time, we'll catch you on the Fwoosh and at Mattel Creations.